Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone. Welcome to the Gameweek 8 pod of the FPL Wire. I'm your host, Zoph, and I'm joined by my co hosts, Late Riser and Pras. Neither of them are on wildcard this week, but some have itchier fingers than others. Is that right, LR?
Yeah, I'm quite okay. I think between Pras and I probably I'm a little closer to wildcard because I think his team is a little more stable than mine is at the moment. But for a guy that had 30 points this week and his defense reads Kabore, Estupinan, Bayer, Botman, and Chilwell, and a guy who supports Manchester United, I'm surprisingly calm. I'm not too worried. We'll see what happens. I've taken the last 2 days to look in depth in terms of what a game week 8 wildcard versus a later wildcard looks, and I'm all right. I'll see what happens. How about you, Pras? How are you feeling?
I'm feeling okay. Another week, another slap in the face, another kick in the wherevers, and we move on. We dust ourselves. And as we said last week, it's about what you do from here, not about what happened. So it is fine. I don't think what has gone in terms of outcomes or the picks, but it's fine. I think we have to sort of evaluate everything from what we have learned and what we do going forward.
It's very
What have you
calm,
learned about
Pras. I
man?
think
Yeah,
you're telling us, sorry, LR, before stream, like you didn't want to go on tilt. Go on tilt. It's fine. A lot of us are on tilt, so why not?
The tilt here is I go to office yesterday. Guy sits in front of me. He's in this league, and I've been winning this league 5 years in a row. This guy in front of me says, "Hey, do you know I'm 30 points ahead of you?" I said, "Well, okay, great." The guy next to me is like, "I'm 50 points ahead of you." And I was like, "Really? 50 points?" And I checked, it's true. So basically, there is this element of not casual, not anything, but some people have, it has really worked out. And for some people like me, nothing has worked out. Does it mean you can make up? 100% I'm confident. Both these guys, I'm going to beat them by the end of the season. But it's not a nice feeling. It's not a nice place to be.
Yeah, I totally
I
get
do
that.
think though, because of the options that we have, right? Like I think next week Zoff and my team will have 5 or 6 options that are different. Because of the way the pricing is done, the options that you don't have are going to be potentially explosive options no matter what you do. And that just makes the game interesting because you're fighting against 5 or 6 good picks every week. And that is, I don't see that changing for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. And the best part is both these guys, again, from the same story. One of them has Trippier, one of them has Watkins. Both of them, I told them 4 weeks ago, these are good picks. This is the irony of it, right? So the good picks will do well, and you won't own all of them. This is basically what you said.
You know what's happened though, right, Pras? It's the thing is that it's a case of Mary Billy Mujhe Mia. What has happened is that I don't feel that bad because Trippier and Watkins aren't my boys. Trippier and Watkins are your boys, and you've
Man,
been on them. You've been talking
have
them
you
up
looked at
for
the
such a.
comments in my wildcard video? The one I did in first international break, game week 4. The
Yeah.
comments are Watkins. Why would you have Watkins right now? Trippier. How can you have double Newcastle defense right now? Those are the comments. Well,
Yeah.
I think it worked out, but obviously I didn't wildcard, but those who did really did well.
Right. So, if your our team finally clocked a win yesterday, how do you feel about that?
Feeling good. I'm happy with the scorers, especially Broya and Mudrik. Mudrik, you could tell, right? It meant so much to him, as if the weight has been lifted off his shoulders. Even Broya, I was waiting for him to come back into the team. You can go back 3-4 pods. I've been on about how Broya needs to come back. I think he's a step above Jackson. I'm glad he's back. A little bit worried about an injury midway, but he said post game now it was just tiredness. We expect him to be available. I think he's going to start ahead of Jackson, but we need to talk about Sterling, and we will when we come to Chelsea later on, whether he gets back into the team. Because Mudrik also was substituted with an injury, but they asked him again post game. He said he's also fine. So I don't know if Sterling will get back into a winning team. We don't have a large enough sample size for Pochettino to judge that, whether he sticks with a winning formula or not. So I think we are all going to be guessing.
Nice, nice. And you quite enjoyed Lampard's display on Monday Night Football. How does it feel to see your probably favorite footballer ever?
Yeah, it's close between him and Drogba. But it's like
Nice, nice.
it's like whichever hands you prefer, your left hand, your right hand, you need both of them. That's where I am with
Yeah.
those guys.
Right. Let's get on with the sponsor plus
Yes,
and
let's
dive right in.
Let's do that. First up, Fantasy Scout.
Yes. So as always, all the stats that you see on the FPL Wire are from the Fantasy Football Scout members area. If you aren't a member already, please click on the link in the description below. The tables are absolutely fabulous, and now we have 7-8 weeks of data it just makes it even more worthwhile, because if you can't catch all the games, if you can't catch all the highlights, it's about a 15-minute, 20-minute time duration that you spend in the members area, and 7-8 weeks of data is sustainable for you to draw some conclusions from it. So it's a good time to become a member. Click on the link in the description below.
And you guys also know we have partnered with NordVPN. If you're bored of the streaming libraries that are available in your country, you can expand your selection using NordVPN with the click of a button. There are over 5,000 plus server options available, so no content is out of your reach. Privacy is a big deal too for all of us. Nord keeps your data encrypted and your IP address hidden to ensure complete privacy while you're browsing the internet. They've also added a new threat protection feature. You can say goodbye to intrusive website ads and malware. Even if you download an infected file, threat protection kicks in and deletes it before it makes a mess of your computer. If you sign up using our creator code nordvpn.com/FPL Wire, you get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan plus 4 additional months for free. They also offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. Sign up using the link in the description below.
Also, Adam told me that we have a very low views to like ratio. So I'm just going to mention a couple of times, and I want to do this early. We've got a few people watching us, joining us. Just hit the like and subscribe button. It really helps us with the algorithm, and we'd always be grateful for that.
Where should we start, guys? Should we dive into the wildcard discussion first up? Because a lot of people are in wildcard this week, and we can integrate that discussion for non-wildcarders like myself as well.
Yeah, I think that's just a good place to start. General. Plus, you want to just, I think a good place to start would be to big picture what Wildcard 8 team looks like, big picture what Gameweek 10 Wildcard looks like, Wildcard Windows side. So, Pras, what's the difference between the 8 and the 10 Wildcarders that we're looking at as of now?
So look, I think Wildcard 8 has a fairly set things that they need to do. They need to triple up on Spurs because Spurs have Luton and Fulham at home. So you will see Spurs defender, Maddison and Son. If you're off the camp that you want to keep Haaland, and I think, again, we keep repeating it, but we are off the camp. So you'll have Haaland. You'll get Salah now. And that's the core of your team. And then let's say you get Diaby and Cash as the two other Villa guys, and you get Watkins. I've already formed like 7 players out of what your wildcard should look like. So for me, wildcard 8 is something that makes sense for teams that don't have players from these teams. So if you're not heavy on Spurs already, if you don't have Villa, it's a good time to wildcard. No issues with it at all. The negative of wildcard 8 is you may have to make choices which are not ideal. Like if you're picking Areola on your wildcard, Areola doesn't have the best next 2 fixtures. If you're picking Bowen or if you're picking Ward-Prowse, they don't have the next 2 best fixtures. Villa, you can argue, has good fixtures from now on, but you could also potentially wait. So there are some ifs, and what are the sacrifices that you're making to afford a Maddison, Son, Salah, Haaland, Watkins. You could sacrifice one of these guys, or you have to sacrifice in some slot. Game Week 10 wildcard obviously misses out on the points that the Game Week 8 wildcard will score in the next 2 weeks. That is through Salah going big against Brighton and against Everton. It could be Watkins continuing to do what he's doing, or Diaby or Cash. It could be, if you're not tripled up on Spurs, then that could hurt you. But Game Week 10 wildcard, the pros are that, number one, you have more information. So number one, you have more information on these teams. So you know if Darwin is now nailed or not, and every other thing. When we come to the draft, we'll talk about it. But the plus is you have a much more bluer sky in terms of what you want to do to differentiate. Because now Brighton are second in the ticker. Arsenal are third in the ticker. West Ham have a clear run of good fixtures as fourth in the ticker. You could choose to differentiate and say, I want Saka in my team instead of a Maddison. I don't want Son in my team because actually now if I look at Spurs, the next 4 aren't the greatest. You could agree to disagree, but I'm saying there is more areas where you can say, I can choose to be a little bit more different and hop on off these teams. So somebody like me, when I'm thinking about it, I'm saying if I wildcard now, think of it as 2 lanes when you're in a traffic jam. And let's say your lane, you're seeing that it's not moving fast enough and I'm behind in my traffic. I'm going to switch to this lane, which is where everybody is switching. You've locked in being behind some other car. You see what I mean in terms of my example? So if you're behind that car and that also switched and you also switch, you're now going to be behind that car. Maybe you can say, I'm going to stick to my lane and I will switch at a later time when I see another lane that is moving faster. So that's basically the thinking between 8 and 10, very high level.
Just, what comes to my mind when you're thinking about, and when I was looking at this difference, because I was very seriously considering a wildcard and still am. I think both of us are on the same page where I think one serious injury to one of our attackers or a playing defender probably takes us to the wildcard button. But it comes down to the age-old debate of form versus fixtures. Like most of us that aren't wildcarding at the moment own players from a couple of players from United and Chelsea. Now, United are showing no ounce of form whatsoever. Team doesn't look to be in a good shape, but they do play Brentford at home, who've looked fairly poor compared to their own standards themselves, and Sheffield United away. So yeah, it's a form versus fixtures debate there. And then there is both of us own Sterling. So there is that question also, and whether he plays or not. Now, if I'm wildcarding, I currently own Maddison and Son. If I'm wildcarding, who am I replacing Rashford and who did I say Sterling with? I'm replacing them with Diaby and Bowen, for example. I'm jumping on players from West Ham and Villa who have a great run of fixtures game week 10 onwards. But what happens in game week 8 is they play Newcastle at home and they play Aston Villa away. And Aston Villa have Wolves away. We saw what they did, and they leave their best form for their home games. And then West Ham and Villa sort of play each other, and you don't know what kind of a matchup that is. So that's the question. That's the potential of loss of points of teams in form that you're losing out playing the fixture card. And what are you losing out on? Potential team value, because price rises are going crazy.
Yep.
And the second thing is the value of information. And I think the third thing that you mentioned in your Twitter today is the rate at which players are dropping like flies. Like, I think it's very luck dependent, for example. But in my head, I'm like, I'm slightly more comfortable wildcarding after the international break, just so that I know what the injuries are looking like. Just because of how frequent and how many players are getting injured at the moment, that's where I am. And like you mentioned, the opportunity to differentiate. If you're looking at the Game Week 10 wildcard, Zoph, you can move to that. Like a couple of nuances. You're definitely going on a Spurs defender at the moment and probably a second midfielder at the moment. You're potentially avoiding that Spurs defender on a Game Week 10 wildcard because they have Chelsea, Villa, City in 11, 12, and 14. You're probably going heavier on Arsenal, who have a longer term, greater run of purview. And then it isn't going to be an easy wildcard. Like I was trying to play around with drafts, etc. Fitting in Son, who's got a good run of fixtures, and even if he doesn't have a great run of fixtures, he is the striker in an Ange Postecoglou team. I reckon he's on pace for 20 plus goals this season as a midfielder. I think that's huge. You have Bowen, who has a great run of fixtures. You have Saka, potentially a second Arsenal attacker, Gabriel Jesus Martinelli, if they emerge as picks there. Defenders, you have Liverpool, who have a great run of fixtures. And then you have the Haaland conundrum as well. It's going to be really difficult to afford all these good players. If United flip the switch in the next couple of weeks, their fixtures are pretty good too. So it's not going to be easy. And I just hope I don't get another injury that forces the hand this week. I'd much rather wait for 10 is where I am. What are your thoughts, Zoph, in general?
So some counter arguments. Firstly, I think I agree with most of you said, but there's something like, see, injuries can happen anytime. You can wildcard now and you could have 2 injuries next week. Like Baker has, for example, Botman and Eze. I have Botman. That can happen any game week. So the injuries
No, the point is, Zoph, just to elaborate on that point, it's not about that injuries can happen anytime. It can happen this week. Of course, even after 10, it can happen. The point is that if a bigger injury happens between now and 10, we are right now thinking we'll have to make sacrifices. But maybe we don't have to.
Yeah,
maybe
say Haaland gets injured, something like that.
So,
but my point is that you can still accommodate with free transfer. That's not a driving factor. You could add that as maybe one of the supplementary factors. But what you have to consider, right, is the points you're missing out on. See, the last 2 weeks, for example, the points I wildcarded before you guys, where have I got the points from? Primarily from defense. Like the double Newcastle guys, from the goalkeepers, etc., etc. So you are obviously, you're limping across the line a little bit for the next 2 weeks, right? Your team is good, but your team is not quote unquote optimal. And maybe it'll never be optimal because you have so many good picks, but that's really what you have to weigh up. And I don't think that, again, what the difference is, you can, like, let's say you're talking about Game Week 10, you'll still be selling good picks. Like, let's say you get Son in now. There's no argument to not hold Son in Game Week 10. Son could still outscore any of these guys. And ultimately, what the wildcard is still going to come down to is variance. If somebody had wildcarded, let's say in Game Week 3, they would have loaded up on Chelsea. Chelsea did rubbish. Yeah. So even if we have good fixtures, the team still have to deliver. So when the wildcard, the success of it largely comes down to the players you're picking delivering.
Well, where do you stand, Zoph, on the form versus fixture debate, because that's a very nuanced point to discuss. Where, let's say it's Diaby versus Rashford, right? Pre-wildcard, post-wildcard that we're talking about. Now, Villa are playing Wolves away and then West Ham at home versus Rashford that plays Brentford at home and then Sheffield United away. Is it a guaranteed loss of points, or do you think the fixtures can recover? Where's your general? And I get where it's very subjective, but over the years, which way do you lean towards generally?
I have normally been a fixtures guys. We say fixtures do breed form, but we've seen enough now from Manchester United, Chelsea. For example, I got rid of my 3 Chelsea guys and we still had good fixtures. But I just couldn't see the form. Even in Manchester United, you can make a case for keeping them up till 13, 14 because they have good fixtures. But you saw Rashford getting subbed off at around the 75th minute when the team needs a goal. That speaks volumes that where the team is right now. So at that sense, and we have enough data now to see which teams are in form. So I think right now, I would say form plays a bit of a bigger factor for me than fixtures.
Fair enough, and I buy that point. Pras, where do you stand on that?
I think, look, Zoph raises a lot of good, sensible points, but I feel Chelsea had good data to do well as well. I mean, it ended up being the variance point that you're saying that, look, we didn't back the team, but you also sort of, the people who wildcarded earlier benefited from the fact that Chilwell didn't play this game when they kept a clean sheet, or Sterling missed out playing false nine because he got ill. So there's a little bit of, it didn't work out.
Correct. And that's a variance factor. That same thing can happen between 8 and 10. You could say, oh, this was successful because I played it in 10, etc., etc. No. Ultimately, the players you picked got points versus them not getting points.
Exactly. And then there's an affordability thing. Like this wildcard, absolutely nobody will have Trippier. So if they can't have Trippier, I'm happy to have Trippier in the next 2 weeks because I know that if I wildcard today, I won't have. Same with Pranil. He will have Darwin. A lot of wildcards are tempted by him, but because now Watkins is an option, very difficult to have Watkins, Darwin, Haaland front line and have Maddison and Son. So somebody will show a draft and say, yes, I can afford it. Fine, great for you. But what I mean is that it won't be a popular pick. And Darwin could be the guy who scores a hat-trick against Brighton. So in that case, we will come back and say, look, patience paid off. So I just think if your team on paper, it comes down to if your team on paper is maybe 9 out of 11 good picks, 10 out of 11 good picks, not the same picks as other people have, but 10 out of 11, you think these guys can do equally well, then wait, because anything can happen over the international break. Things can change. Or if nothing changes, then you will find a way to afford a team you like in Game Week 10 as well. That's where I sort of wanted to conclude.
Also, just one very macro point. If you are diving in with Salah, Son, and Haaland, like it's a conversation to have. Just something that struck me. If you're diving in with Salah, Son, and Haaland, it's invariable that your squad is going to be very thin. Now, is that something I just don't know the answer. That's why I'm asking. Is that something that's recommended in a phase of football that we are seeing so many injuries in terms of having such a thin squad? Maybe a good 4th defender, an archer is enough, do you think, to suffice and move through that?
I think Salah, Son, Haaland is quite doable with a pretty decent squad. What's not doable is Salah, Son, Saka and Haaland. Getting the second semi-premium mid, that's what's tricky. And that's a decision I had to make for that structure versus a Trippier. And I decided, like Prasad mentioned, the pain points are in midfield. I'd rather cater to that, where you can get because ultimately I missed out on Trippier, but I got 12 points from Botman, I've got 13 points from Share. And that 2 million, I've had it. Of course, you can say Salah didn't deliver. Right. But then again, you get that assist last week, etc., etc. Things can happen. That's variance over there. I still find the idea of spending low in defense, putting that money in midfield, the way to go.
And just a point on squad depth, I just think that we are in this period where between Game Week 8 and Game Week 16, until Salah is, let's say optimal is the word, or his fixtures are just too good that you can't even think about not having, which is also a debate that we can have later.
Let's do it now, since you've sent us some data. Let's do the Salah debate.
Let me just finish the point on Haaland, on Salah. What I mean is after that finishes, after Game Week 16 run finishes of Salah's, and he has tougher fixtures, then he goes to AFCON, people will have value money again. So when you will sell Salah down to, let's say, Saka, or let's say Maddison back, then you will spend that 4th defender. Maybe people will have Trippier instead of, your 3.9 defenders. So I'm not very worried for that small phase because you have a nice archer who's got great fixtures between 10 and 14. Because you can have another defender. Let's say Burnley has great fixtures between 10 and 14. So my point is it's okay to have a small sacrifice to have a Salah for little bit of lack of bench strength and lack of maybe the third best defender, because it's a temporary phase.
Got it.
Great point on the Burnley defense and Archer. Good enablers with good fixtures. I mean, not good enablers, but at least you're getting bottom price assets with good fixtures who are playing.
I agree, but then I don't agree. I've seen certain drafts out there where, let's say, and we'll discuss one of them with Lamptey and, like, let's say, a Burnley defender. That scares me. We'll talk about that once we get to the wildcard drafts. Let's do the Salah discussion first, because that has a lot of determination on our thinking going forward. Plus, this is some data you sent me. Walk us through it.
Yeah, this is all from the FPL website. So this slightly differs from the FFS members area. They're all from Opta, but sometimes just people log certain chances differently. But in effect, this is all the 7 games that Liverpool have had. And per game, how many minutes each player has played, how much XG and how much XA have they created. The first caveat is, of course, Liverpool have had 3 games where they've had, they've been down to 10 men. So that affects your attacking data, especially when you look at it. The second thing is, when you look at Salah's data, there's 2 penalties in there. Again, you can say that's part and parcel of being a penalty taker. But effectively what this is saying is, so now 2 things. Number one, there has been a preference in terms of minutes for Diaz and Darwin to play together and Jota and Gakpo to play together. If you look at basically the trends, game week 4, Diaz and Darwin played together. Game week 6, Diaz and Darwin played together. So in terms of minutes, now that Gakpo is out and Jota has been a little bit on the periphery anyway, more recently, pretty much I think we agree that Diaz, Darwin and Salah are going to start the next one, if not the next 2-3. In terms of attacking data, Diaz is right up there. I mean, Diaz has essentially missed 1 game where he was basically, it was post-international break, game week 4, where he was benched against Wolves. They were so bad that he was basically brought on. In the game where he played 32 minutes against Newcastle, that was basically, he was a scapegoat because Van Dijk got a red card, so he had to come off for Matip or Gomez, somebody. So apart from that, he's starting. His XG, he's number 3 or 4 in terms of non-pen XG of all midfielders. So the question here is, and I'll put it
Is
to
it XG or XGI? Because his numbers are
goals.
XG.
His XA is rubbish.
XG.
His XA is, as you can see here, basically minimal. So question is, do you want the goal scorer? Or now in Salah's case, which everybody's saying, you get good XG, not as good as the past, but very good. And if you include penalties, then very, very good. An excellent XA, better than it's ever been. Or you get basically a Darwin, Diaz, and Trent. Can you do that or not? I'm not answering the question. I'm putting it to you, LR.
Can we move to the captaincy matrix, because that defines this conversation? And
First,
it's not
should we not discuss the Liverpool ecosystem itself?
Sure.
Let's discuss Diaz. I think we can skip Jota and Gakpo for now, because ultimately they're not suspended. They're not in the conversation. Let's talk about the other 2 guys. I think Diaz, you've already spoken a bit. Prasan, now, LR, you're a Darwin owner. So I want your comments on this.
So generally, in terms of Diaz, right? For me, so far, despite what data he's shown, right, he still seems like not an enabler, but picking a Liverpool attacker pick because they're such a good attack pick rather than him. A coverage pick rather than him being a really good FPL pick. Like, that's where I am with Diaz. And I don't think I don't share the same sentiment with Darwin. I feel incredibly frustrated that he had that little injury that he's carrying, and that's something we need to monitor, because it could be a potential issue in the future. Because I think there was a trajectory based on Klopp's comments, based on the way Darwin was given the European game, and immediately 3 days later given the league game, that he's shifting towards first choice. And I feel like Darwin 70 minutes shifting towards first choice, his numbers per 90, and you never expect him to play 90. It's either 60 or 30. 60 to 70 minutes or 30 minutes with Darwin are the only one in the league coming close to Erling Haaland. And for me, that as a punt is worth it. It's just generally worth it because of the incredibly high top tier. Like, it's Haaland and Darwin in that XG per 90, and then a long gap, and then everybody else. That was my perception in terms of that being worth it. And I still think post game week 10, because game week 9, again, pre the international break, he's playing in the CONCACAF.
Somewhere in South America. Yeah, on Tuesday.
Somewhere in South America on Tuesday night, which is early Wednesday morning. And, Jota is going to be fresh and likely he'll be starting and you're going to get 30-40 minutes of Darwin, probably in that home game against Everton. But after that, I expect him to maybe start 4 out of the 5 games is where I am. But again, what the thing with Liverpool is it's a very horses for courses, form focus. Like one player, Jota has 2 good games and then he's back in sort of thing. You need to be sort of prepared for that if you're making the Darwin punt. But I think we've reached a point of evolution where the numbers that Pras sent me once in terms of how he's doing when he's pressing and he's top in the league for recoveries in the final third is what I've read. That's the game changer. That's given Klopp more confidence to play him because pressing is such an important part of Liverpool's game. I think he's worth the upside, but you need to time it correctly, and timing it correctly is potentially Game Week 10 wildcard, not even Game Week 8 or 9 is where I am.
I'd agree with that.
What do you think, Zoph, on
Diaz
essentially covering Salah? So, we'll come to the captaincy conversation because you can make a case for any player. You can say, I can cover Haaland in the next 6 weeks, 8 weeks because there's other options. You can cover Son apart from Luton. Maybe you can cover him in other weeks. Similarly, you can do for Salah. So you don't have to make an argument to say, I have to have Salah because I'll captain him in certain weeks. And we will have that discussion in a second. But if you have the same money, so let's say you said you had to sacrifice Saka or you had to sacrifice Son. Basically, Salah plus 4.5 Archer is the same amount of money, almost the same amount of money as Son and Darwin. So does that sort of change? Would you do it for these fixtures that are so incredibly good? Or do you think it's just too far?
See, I think Liverpool are the marquee team. They're the top 3 teams in the league, and I don't think you compromise. And what I learned, this was in the Kane seasons very early on. I often try to cover him with Eriksen or Ali, something like that. It just never worked. The main guy is the main guy. And ultimately, captaincy, we will talk about it a bit later. I think it is a huge factor now post the international break. Will I ever captain Darwin? Hell no. I'm never confident of him starting. I'm never going to go there. Am I going to captain Diaz? No. I don't even feel confident captaining Saka or Son to the same extent as I do a Salah. Saka could give a penalty to anyone on that day. Right? And here we see Salah. We know that McAllister is the better penalty taker, but he's still taking the penalties. And he has so many strings to his bow now with the bonus, XA, and everything. For me, going forward post-IB, absolute non-negotiable. But I'm a Salah fanboy, so I can't say I'm not biased there.
To be honest, I am the same. So I want to use that as first to say that I don't see any way I will go without Salah. I may go without Son before I go without Salah after Game Week 10. But I'm just saying, look, on the eye, he is now basically the guy who gets the ball. Nobody comes to dribble him. He finds that pass. Right? He's finding those passes. He's not the guy actually making the dribbles and shooting what we've seen him do so much. Look at his numbers. I mean, his XG, basically, if you take out the 2 penalties, and actually it's more than that because the second penalty that he missed, actually the Bournemouth one, he then got more XG for actually shooting so close to the goal. Basically, he scored the rebound. So actually on an XG basis, he's same as Diaz. So then the question is, his XA is so high that he's basically a De Bruyne with bonus on penalties, which actually is amazing, but it's not the same 300-point Salah. Is that too much of a stretch, or LR, do you see, at least from the eye, that there's a little bit of change in terms of how he's playing?
It's not too much of a stretch. There is a case of the goalposts shifting a little, where earlier, and there are 2 teams in Liverpool. There's the Gakpo-Jota team and there is the Darwin-Diaz team. If it's the Gakpo-Jota team, I feel like Salah's probably the primary goal scorer because Gakpo sort of plays the Firmino role and both of them are split forwards. It isn't the case in the Darwin thing where I don't think Salah's Liverpool's primary goal scorer. He's a very important goal scorer and their primary creator. Like he creates that many good chances a game. So he's going to be involved in points. And the crux of the matter is nobody offers as much reliability of expected minutes that Salah does in the probably the best attack in the league. Given what we've seen of City so far, they're definitely in the top 2 attacks in the league. So nobody offers that reliability, and there's his penalties. You almost think that the slight lack of goal-scoring menace that Salah has gone down on by 15-20%, those goalposts have shifted. It's sort of made up by how creative he's become and how much of a bonus point monster he's become. Because he always used to return, and now those returns are now close to De Bruyne-esque 5-point return, 6-point return. So he's covering that up as well. And I'm trying to debate that internally as well, because I was playing around with a Gameweek 10 wildcard. It isn't easy. It isn't easy. Like if we can just move to the Gameweek 10 fixture again, Zoph. Like let me just pull it up quickly. Like, how do you not have Son for a run of Palace, Chelsea, Wolves, Aston Villa, simply being the forward in that Spurs team? How do you not have Saka for Sheffield United at home and Burnley at home, and then Wolves at home in a period of 5 fixtures? Then you're thinking about owning a Jared Bowen and Everton at home, Forest at home, Burnley away, Crystal Palace at home. Then you're thinking of owning Ollie Watkins and Diaby for Luton, Forest, and Fulham. Like, there's just so many options. Like, how do you manage this? You're going to go up against 1 or 2 elite assets. Definitely Salah's up there because they are the best attack out of all these options. But there's going to be tough decisions come game week 10. I'll just say that. That's where we are.
And there is going to be big variance. Certain picks will deliver and certain won't.
Yeah, I'll tell you what it might come down to for game week 10 wildcarders is by the time game week 10 comes around. And the thing is, we might not have just enough information because we're expecting Darwin to play 30-35 minutes in game week 9. But if Darwin emerges as first choice, that's the only way you can cover Liverpool with Salah. Against Salah. Like, I don't see any other way for that to happen.
I still don't think you can cover Salah. Then Darwin becomes a good pick on his own right. I think when you do that, you're not looking to cover Salah. You're just looking to get a good pick. I can't be convinced that you can cover Salah's points as such. Salah will continue to tick along. You expect Darwin gets close to that. I guess that's the definition of cover. What you mean over there.
And what we're doing here essentially is just offering food for thought because we are internally debating. We don't know what the right answer is. Pras and I have looked at wildcard options in 8 and 10, and we are figuring what the hell to do if now or if in 10. And I think now is the good time to move into the captaincy matrix because it just makes a good point that Pras was saying. So if you're trying to cover or looking at captaincy options in game week 8, you're captaining Salah or Son. I think Salah is the better captain right now because we'll get into that later. Because expected minutes for Son are slightly questionable given the injury that he's carrying at the moment. In game week 9, you've got Salah having Everton at home, but you also have Son having Fulham at home and Haaland having Brighton at home. Then in 10, you have Salah with Forest at home, and then you have Saka having Sheffield United at home. In 11, you have Salah having Luton away, and you have Haaland having Bournemouth at home. In 12, you have Salah having Brentford at home, and Son and Saka having good fixtures. So at any point you're looking at this, there is alternate good captaincy option available. And that is even taking out teams like Villa offering good captaincy options at home at the moment, where we are seeing players scoring 4 or 5 players. So it's a conversation to have. It's a conversation where you need to sit down what you're more comfortable and what you're not. I mean, when we were having this conversation with Zoph, and Zoph's first reaction was then maybe it's a conversation to have about Haaland, not Salah.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. And what is the give and take, Because if you lose out on one Uber premium, and by Uber premium, I mean Salah or Haaland, it sort of enables a trend differential. You can't go there. You can't go to trend covering this captaincy without losing, without keeping both Salah and Haaland is where I am. So yeah, food for thought. That's all.
But not just Trent. You could, instead of Bowen, you could have Saka. Like you could have Son, Saka, Salah draft without Haaland.
Yeah.
Again, I don't think people will do it because actually, if you step back and think about it, Haaland, for me, is the best captain in game week 9. No matter how good green those look at home against how Brighton are looking right now, it will be okay. Let's say it's close, but I feel because of ownership, because of it's post international break and whatever, I think he's one of the top picks. I think in 11 he's the best pick without question. Then I think there's another tricky week, which is game week 13. Where everybody has a bad fixture. But again, Haaland is at home to Liverpool. So there's nobody who you can say, maybe Son, Villa, but am I trusting Man City at home against an average defense? I think I'll probably captain Haaland in game week 13. So there are, if you guys feel differently, but I think there's 3 weeks in the next 6 that you can captain Haaland.
I'd agree
with
that.
just, again.
What do you think, Zoph?
I'd agree with that. And like you could even say that like Liverpool and Tottenham at home are good fixtures. And what worries me about Son, right? Just look at the Fulham at home. I don't think it's a great fixture for Son in particular because it's going to be again deep block. Like we discussed, the last 2 fixtures were the games where Son gets the room to run inside. When you see a good fixture at home for Son, it's not the same thing as it is for Salah or Haaland. Do you guys agree with that point? He's not reached that level of yet, I think, in
I
trust as
just
a
don't think
captaincy
Fulham is
option.
that deep block kind of team.
Yeah, Fulham is openish. Like, I like Fulham as a fixture. But I agree the deep block point. I don't like him against a Palace or a
Maybe
Wolves.
not Fulham is a bad example, just even like any of the other teams you can say. He's not the same, like, trust. You look at an easy home fixture like we saw with Sheffield United, Salah would have delivered there. It's a very different kind of player, Son, compared to Salah.
But you need to make a subjective judgment call, because I won't be surprised, provided Son plays striker, that he has more goals than Mo Salah by the end of the season.
Very possible.
Like, very possible, provided Son plays striker. He's playing striker in an Ange team, then he's good for goals. Like, that's the important thing. Again, just I was in the members area for Scout and just citing some numbers. Non-penalty XG so far this season, Bowen's top at 3.54. Son is second at 2.94. Then you have Saka at 2.48. Sitting somewhere 7th or 8th is Salah at 2.22. Just NPXG so far this season. And NPXGI, Salah's second. He's matching Saka at the moment. And Son is at 4.21. And the top two are at 4.96 and 4.95. Number 3 is Bruno. And Rashford is number 3 for NPXG as well. But United is just underperforming at the moment. And we spoke about how confidence. But those numbers aren't saying Saka is the best pick. Sorry, Salah is the best pick. Yeah. And it doesn't sit right with us because we are so used to Salah being the king of FPL, and his finishing is good. And when Liverpool are a team on song, you don't bet against them. And I don't want to bet against Salah at the moment. It's just food for thought for you guys. That's all.
Correct. But this is why I feel it is just a holiday period of Salah in our team, which is really odd to say given what we have all worshipped in the last 5 years of FPL. But I really feel Salah is only there on holiday for this really insane run where some of them he could be the best captain or the second best captain. Enjoy those points, release the Salah money after 16 and enjoy your benches. And, I don't want, when I wildcard, I don't want to worry that much about if one game week I need my second sub and I end up playing, Bear. I'm okay because I'm affording Salah for this short honeymoon period. And after that, I'll spread his money. And then I really do think that Son will score more goals because he's creating more XG. He's scoring goals. It's back to the old Salah versus old De Bruyne argument. De Bruyne gets bonus, De Bruyne gets assists, not enough goals. But this is obviously 7-game sample only. This may change by game week 10 and Salah scored a brace and then we're all saying, okay, Salah's goals.
And Salah's definitely a better, bigger goal scorer than what De Bruyne was of. Like that, he's secondary sort of striker in that team is where we are.
Plus penalties.
Yeah. I think we've done enough in terms of at least offering enough food for thought between a game week 8 and a game week 10 wildcard. I think what we can move into is there are many people wildcarding in game week 8, and that conversation can be congruent with picks that you want to get into right now, picks that you want to buy right now. I think that's a good point to go. So we can maybe do the game week 8 ticker and a game week 8 draft.
Right. So let's just do I think we've had the ticker up for a while now, and we can always just go back to it. I just want to read out the draft that one of you guys sent me. I'll just go through it quickly for the audio guys. Turner, Ariola in goal. Cash, Porro, Udogi. 2 cheap defenders in Lamptey and Kabore. In midfield, Salah, Bowen, Diaby, Son. Nakamba as a 4.4. Watkins, Alvarez, Haaland. Essentially a 3-4-3. Now, LR, you sent me this draft. Just explain this to me, what your thinking is.
Yeah, there are few picks that I'd go for no matter what. If going now, I'd go Salah. For sure, because I think he's the strongest captaincy option this week. And we'll talk about that in a debate later. But he's a very good captaincy option this week. And he's good as a differential until game week 10 because Saka doesn't have the good fixtures right now. So I'd give him a miss for 2 weeks and see what to do with regards to Saka a little later. Alvarez is a slightly debatable spot because they play a very strong Arsenal. So you can get rid of Arsenal. I don't have very high team value. So you can get rid of Alvarez and instead put Archer in there and keep a Maddison in there and go for a slightly different defender. But it's a very tricky proposition to go for defenders. But I'd stick Bowen in there. I'd stick Villa assets in there. What would you guys change in terms of a wildcard now?
Pras, you want to go first?
I think the popular one will be Maddison instead of Alvarez here.
But you have to find 0.8 million, right, for that. Let's say you put Archers, you need to find like close to 1 million. Where are you going to find that?
From Saturday. So I'm thinking a lot of people have gained some value of some of, from the people who've risen like Salah.
My team value is terrible. I held on to Chelsea and United for too long. So this is a different slightly below average team value sort of
Which
draft.
is better, right? Because we got a
Yeah.
little bit blamed last season for putting up teams with high team value. It's always be better we do it with lower. Because if you
So
can
people
afford
will
a
have to
season.
sacrifice the Bowen spot because Bowen feels like a luxury with the two difficult fixtures now. You can, but if you still are believers of West Ham, and I think a lot of people will have West Ham picks in Game Week 10, you can go for Ward-Prowse. You can go for, let's say, even a Gordon. I mean, Eze would have been high if he wasn't injured because he's got a great fixture. So that one spot, that Bowen spot, you can play around with to get and afford a Maddison instead of an Alvarez. But this is what I mean. This draft, you can ask any Game Week 8 wildcarder. They'll have the same two goalkeepers. They will have cash. They will have Poro or Udogi and a 4 million defender and a cheapo defender. So there's one defender where you're differentiating yourself in Game Week 8 wildcard. They'll have Salah. They'll have Diaby. They'll have Son. Probably everyone will have Maddison as well. This draft doesn't have it, but a lot of them will make it work. And the other reason why you want Maddison is you want that slot there if you want to get to a Saka at some point. You may not get there by Game Week 9, but you may want to get there in the future when you're selling Salah
I'll
or
say Game
somebody
Week
else.
12, because Game Week 11 they have Newcastle away. You could potentially keep Arsenal till 12.
Correct. And so, and then in attack, you have Watkins and Haaland. Pretty much everyone wildcarding now will have Watkins. The only variation here is some people may say Watkins, maybe, it's more, we're knee jerking. He's still over 7 weeks. He was okay. I'll still stick to my second City attacker and I'll get Trippier as my defender. That is my differentiator. So that could be something that people look at.
Just in terms of now, let's go, position by position in terms of just general recommendations that we're liking. And Zoph, I think now we can move back to the ticker so that we're just helping out the wildcarders here.
Good. I just want to give a few comments first on my take on what players I would change. The goalkeepers are fine. Spurs defense, I definitely wouldn't double up. Because like we saw, the next two are good. In fact, I think Luton score. Luton are improving every game at their own ground. They will give Spurs a game. It feels like a 5-3 sort of Burnley kind of scoreline. You keep probably Porto. If I was to pick one today, I think Porto is head and shoulders above. That's quite clear. And now the price difference is only 0.2. So you pay that extra. I like the idea that you've skipped on Newcastle defense. I think the best two fixtures are past them now. West Ham have scored in every game. Palace now without Eze, again, good fixture. Then it's Wolves away. And then we can look at the fixtures. I think for Newcastle, they get quite tough very soon. I think they have a bunch of home games against Chelsea, Manchester United. Of course, they could keep clean sheets, but they're not ideal. Arsenal, etc., etc. So I think you can possibly shade that for now.
Because there's an important conversation to have with Newcastle, right? Botman is potentially injured, which makes their defense slightly weaker. And it also takes away the best value pick in that defense. Like you're wondering what is happening, etc., with Newcastle. So that's the thing.
A lot of people have recommended Burn, but the thing is, I did a lot of research, spoke with a lot of Newcastle fans. The spacing was very kind on this side of the international break between the UCL matches. Like even now they play on a Wednesday, then they play on a Sunday. Once they start getting that Wednesday, Saturday turnaround, which will happen at some point over the next few months, that's when you need to start worrying about Burn, because Livramento was very good when he played midweek in the Carabao. Target was decent as well. So you might see the odd rotation with Burn. If you're okay with that, it's fine, but I wouldn't really do that right now. Then, and the two 4.0 defenders feels risky to me. Because as soon as you get an injury, like you saw with Botman over there, you're going to start umming and eyeing over that spot. Go ahead, Ella.
Yeah, I think let's just do this position-wise, because I think just some recommendations to make based on position-wise is a good idea to do. Yeah. Keepers, if at all you're considering anybody else, where would you go, Zoph?
I would, in fact, now even look to save 4.0 down there, because I think Turner's going to lose his spot imminently. He was quite poor versus Brentford, quite shaky. Get 3.9 and go Areola. Save off 0.1 over there. And I'm quite convinced.
The Brentford second keeper, Stratoshka.
Exactly. Whoever just a 3.9 does, just save 0.1.
Pray that Flecken loses his spot.
Correct. Yeah. Then possibly that, like, Kabore is fine. Kabore maybe could put Bay. I've seen certain teams with Charlie Taylor. Go ahead.
Before moving to defenders, I'd say the only other keeper that I'd potentially consider is Johnston. I think my perception of Palace as a very good defense has sort of changed. The only problem is, and it's something you mentioned before we got on the pod, is that Eze being out injured for 6 weeks, just make sure that they have to fully park the bus. Crystal Palace might not have as much of the ball that they did, which was a great point that you made. So that sort of takes it away, because without that news, like, if I was looking at Maddison instead of Alvarez and then getting a defender instead of Udogi or Porro, it would be a Palace defender maybe as a shout, just because they are a stable defense that you can rely on.
Right. And then I would go for Anderson. in that case. Raya, again, you can look at, but I can get you a Gabriel at 4.7. The thing is, we discussed this before my wildcard so much was when you're getting an Areola is not an Iverson or a Ward, what we had last year, where you can say that spending 4.2 gets you rubbish points. Areola is a good goalkeeper in a good team who are on the up.
Yeah.
So I think at 4.2, just spend the lowest possible in the lowest upside position. You can get your Gabriel and all that stuff in a like, your outfield players where we are struggling around today. Like I'm thinking Cash, Porto. I'm right now struggling to recommend a third guy and around the 4.5-ish bracket. I would probably even say Gabriel. Just get him in for the fixtures that are to come. Because Chelsea away is a good fixture for clean sheet anyway. There's possibly only the City one where it's a little bit dodgy.
Exactly why I put the double Spurs defender in. Just, I spent 10-15 minutes building this draft, and I'm actually building a wild draft. There's 5 days of thought that goes into it. But like the first, because there are more attackers than I want, that I like, instead of defenders, I just took the easier way route to go double Spurs defense. But you'll want to get rid of this double Spurs defense sooner than you think. So that's just the conversation to have.
So I would probably downgrade Udogi and look to upgrade Lamptey, maybe Gabriel there. Lamptey, maybe you could even roll with double guys, like maybe a double Kabore and a Burnley thing if you really want that. But I wouldn't place Lamptey in there for sure. It just feels very flaky. He himself is a player who you can expect getting injured any second, right? We know with Lamptey's history. So possibly avoid that. And I understand team value is a problem over here. So I do have that in mind. Again, Porto is, you could possibly downgrade Porto as well. Because again,
if you have,
go ahead.
If you have slightly more money, couple of shouts that come to my mind is one is Dean, because he's actually been a lot more attacking than Cash. He's on 4 yellow cards, so just keep that in mind, and you need to have enough squad depth. And Moreno is about to get fit. And then, just out of the blue shout, Liverpool defense is improving. What do you think about a Van Dijk or a Robbo?
The thing is with Trent, right, then Robbo becomes very much deeper. So I wouldn't possibly go that. Again, Van Dijk I think is a bit too much for what he offers.
Robbo's the same price as Trippier. So no chance.
So exactly. And Trippier, the thing is, look at those home fixtures against Chelsea, Arsenal. You still don't mind a Trippier. Newcastle, because all the tough games are at home. He's still going to get an attack.
They kept clean sheets against Arsenal, Man United last season at home. So
absolutely,
they're a good team at home.
They're a good team at home, and Trippier can always get that set piece, etc. So again, I don't mind that pick, but I'm again struggling to recommend picks in defense. Besides, I would say Cash, Gabriel, maybe one Spurs defender, and probably go cheap after that. Let's just have a quick look at the ticker, because a Palace or one kidney I was going to recommend. Let's look at a longer view. Let's look at the next, let's say up to game week 15. You probably don't go Forest. Burnley, again, we saw the fixtures are good. You're not going to go Wolves, Villa. West Ham, actually, somebody you could look at, I think, as well for your home rotation.
Again, bad next two is the problem that will put people off. So I think, look, long term. So forget that you're on wildcard and that you need to score points in the next two. Let's take, like you said, long-term horizon. Who are the defenses we want? Newcastle, Arsenal. I would still say Brighton after game week 10. Because their fixtures are so good, and particularly Brighton. When I say Brighton, Estupiñán. If the assumption is that he's had his naughty step of halftime subbing because he was poor in that first half, then I think those are the 3 picks. Whether you go for Burn, you're taking a risk with Burn. If you go for a Botman, if he's fit, much better pick. If you go for a Share, even better. Trippier, even better. So again, funds are an issue. Then between Arsenal, I think you have Gabriel, you have Zinchenko, superb prices. You can easily go for a double up even, obviously after the Man City game. But long term, that's the defense to have. And I think that's then your cover, right? I mean, I don't think Aston Villa is a really long-term defense that you want to have after game week 13 as well. So Cash just feels now good for 13. Then you can deal with him after.
6 game weeks is a lot, right?
If you
get 6 game weeks out of a 4.5-ish, 5, like he's got 4.9 now, but it's still good value, I would say.
Just circling back to Estupiñán, has the goal post shifted for either of you in terms of expected minutes? Because Lamptey's been decent whenever he's played. And what happened against Villa was that Diaby was causing Estupiñán a lot of problems. But does that make you worry long term, or you think he's good? He's just too good to be second choice, etc. Zoph?
A little bit. Because I'm worried about De Zerbi's comments. He says we are struggling a little bit with 3 games every day. And I think Estupiñán looked off it. He didn't look like his stamina, energy, sharpness, whatever was not there. So little bit of a rotation risk comes to me as a concern, but I would still pick him. Because at 5.1, I think he'd probably drop to 5.2. Most people will have him at 5.1. I think he's still good value if you can cover him for the next 2 fixtures.
Yeah, man. You know why I mentioned Van Dijk, right? Because after 8, it's Everton home, Forest home, Luton away, Brentford home, Fulham home, and Sheffield United away.
Because what you
It
can do
just
possibly
screams
get
clean.
correct. And what I like, let's say you can get a share now. And that was the main reason, one of the reasons I thought of share. You can always convert him into somebody like an Estupinan, and maybe you don't have to go as soon as 12 or 10 or whatever, but that placeholder, the structure is there in place, right?
Yeah. Right. Midfielders, I think, are quite obvious. We've covered the flurry of good picks when we're talking about rotating good picks. But
I'm
any
still
enablers?
very high on Bowen over Ward-Prowse. And something I noticed in the West Ham game, Ward-Prowse wasn't making as many forward runs this time. It was Souček. And this is something we didn't see from Thomas last season. He would usually play a deeper role, but he was constantly breaking into the box with Ward-Prowse playing deeper.
He's number 1 on my watch list in midfielders at the moment. Like I've started.
He's a striker.
I always
like guys like your son Bowen, right? Once you see an out of position midfielder playing striker, they're gold.
And he's had 1 season of underperformance and 1 season of overperformance. He's overperforming. He's confident. West Ham are just a team in a good place. They're a much better team than last season. I think they've invested really well. Don't really have to worry too much. Like I have a note which says notes for wildcard whenever I wildcard. Like it just says do not compromise on Jared Bowen. Like I feel that strongly about him as a pick right now. Just looks on it.
Yeah.
Looks very dangerous.
Correct. I like it as well. I think he'll be a good enabler to get some of the others. 7.2 is still a great price. Highest so far, first 7 games, highest XG and non-pen XG.
Yeah.
And I probably wouldn't stick with the 3-4-3. I'd still like to go with the 3-5-2. I like still Archer as a first sub, and besides that, I think the hop-on, hop-offs are still better in midfield. I would sacrifice Alvarez probably and sound a little bit of recency bias, but probably keep Watkins in there now.
What do you think of Neto as an enabler? They've got decent fixtures.
I like him more so than Gordon, I think, because he will rotate Gordon. I think no matter how thin their squad is, once the UCL fixtures come thick and fast, he will see some sort of rotation. Fixtures are good.
Yeah, Villa home, Bournemouth away, Sheffield United away, Fulham away, and Burnley at home. 5 good fixtures in the slate of next 8, which is pretty decent. All playable fixtures.
Yeah, I'm looking at him as potentially an Mbumo downgrade to enable some money later on.
JWP also as an enabler is fine. And some people might have an issue doubling up. I think as an enabler, he's going to. I think both these picks are going to.
But you shouldn't not pick Bowen. Like we were talking to Baker earlier, he doesn't want to invest in the West Ham because he has JWP. Yeah. I don't think you should let that. If he's there as an enabler, that's fine. But Bowen is a great pick.
Exactly. I'm with you on that. And Diaby would be in there. One pick I want to discuss, and I think it's going to be interesting, that wasn't in Pras's list, is Szoboszlai an FPL pick. What I've noticed in the last 2-3 games, he's taking positions sort of Gundoganish. And he's trigger happy. Has scored a few goals. Is on set pieces as well. Is he a pick? A glue guy? Nailed on for minutes. More nailed on than anybody else in that 7 to 9 million for Liverpool. Just a discussion to be had. I don't think he's very withdrawn. I think he's quite attacking, especially when they play Jones, Mack, and Szoboszlai. He's sort of like the advanced 8 amongst all 3 of them.
Better picks in midfield, in my opinion.
Also a little early for me, because at the moment we've not seen Liverpool really play a lot against deep blocks, teams that don't want to attack. They've had difficult games. In the difficult games, he will never create the underlying data because they're not in the box as much. Most of the chances you can even visualize it in your head, come out of defense. Szoboszlai gives it to Salah. Salah makes a diagonal pass to someone. So he's assisting the assister or the potential assister. So his numbers are actually poor apart from these worldies that he's shown that he can score. I want to see if he's actually getting the goals, the tap-ins. I want to see tap-ins.
What's his price?
What you're saying actually, if you're 7 million, if you're talking about like deep blocks, it almost sort of makes him a better pick because you're thinking of Odegaard style cutbacks and he's trigger happy. He's one of the best shooters as well. So it's just one place to monitor.
So I'm agreeing with you. Deep block, he may be better, but I would see it rather than sacrificing a precious mid slot at a 7 million price bracket.
I think you're getting talent.
It's a monitor
at lower prices. Then I won't go there. I'm quite convinced on
Fair
that.
enough.
You get your Mitomas and even Kudus. I think Kudus is going to be a name we haven't even mentioned over the next few game weeks. He's too good a player to not be on the radar.
Interesting question in the chat. Who would you sacrifice if you had to sacrifice one out of Bowen, Diaby, or Maddison?
I'd move Maddison onto Bowen in 2 weeks. I'd get Maddison.
Great shout. Great shout. 2 prime fixtures. Just great shout.
I think that's pretty clear to me. I think that, but Maddison for the next one, I really think he's potentially a better captaincy shout than Son against Luton. Because let me ask you guys, how many returns do you think Maddison has at home this season?
5.
0.
0. All away.
All away.
All away.
Again,
Wow.
happenstance, small sample size, etc., whatever you call it.
Fair shout. Fair shout. Man, it's a tough, fun but tough FPL season.
We'll just do a Game Week 10 wildcard quick comparison just so that people can visualize the differences. And Pras, you send this to me so you can just walk us through it.
Yeah, so the first thing was I've got Flecken in goal here, only out of showing off that there's enough money in the bank. It's not like we can't afford the team. So Flecken was there because I think he has a double, right? So he has a double coming up in 20. And by the way, we will after this, let's not forget talking about a late wildcard as well, because a lot of people ask the question. So there will be a double game week very likely in game week 20 for Brentford and for Man City. So he was just there as an option, but I think very likely people will just go same keepers, basically Areola and 3.9. So in defense now, I think defense is a little bit clearer because there's a good open view of good fixtures for Arsenal, for Brighton, and for Villa, at least in the short term. So these 3 defenders are fairly natural picks. You could go for double Arsenal defense if you wanted to. Let's say Stupinan isn't looking good. You go for double Arsenal defense. Zinchenko is 4.9. Then midfield, I think Bowen clear pick. No need to think about it. Diaby, next 3 games of Luton, Nottingham Forest, Fulham. Don't think about it. Mitoma, we can talk about him, but Brighton have very good fixtures and he could be a glue 6.6, but there are many 6.6 options. So an option, but doesn't have to be the one. I have started here with Saka and there is $1 million in the bank. And the $1 million in the bank basically I want Saka for Sheffield United. And I hope and pray that Son does okay against Crystal Palace away. And then, because again, deep block, Crystal Palace will be deep block away. So then you move Saka onto Son. And the idea would be that in 3 weeks, once Aston Villa have played their good fixtures, you downgrade Watkins to Solanke, you upgrade Diaby to Saka. So then long term, your team has Salah, Saka, Son, which is basically the team you want. And it has Bowen and it has Mitoma. That was the thinking of 2 weeks obviously away.
What this tells you is if you have Son instead of Mitoma, you just can't afford it with Salah and Haaland. Essentially, that's what it tells you, and you need to have to make choices at that point, which you can make at that point, but that's the dilemma that's going to come in front of you.
Or you have Solanke in attack now. You sacrifice Watkins.
Yeah, he's a good enabler shot. I think that's what Andy, Let's Talk FPL shouted him out as an option as an enabler.
Good fixtures on pens.
Yeah. You'll need a couple of those glue guys, I think, to tread along to afford the big hitters. Just an outside shout I want to make this shout right now is whenever Fati has come into play in that Brighton team, he's playing sort of as a 10 striker hybrid, playing very central, not on the wing at all. His positioning that he's taking up is very, very encouraging. Just watch that space.
So just a quick comparison, gents, between the Game Week 8 and 10 wildcard. The main difference I'm seeing is Spurs. Because you see a Salah, Bowen, Diaby, Watkins, Haaland is there. Son can become Saka quite easily, right? You see Mitoma
but
and
Bowen's
then
not there, right? I think we agreed that we will sacrifice Bowen out of
Let's
Diaby
say for
and
Maddison. Let's say Bowen comes here for Maddison. So you probably slot that. Again, keep in mind you have transfers. And see, what I've usually done in the past few seasons, and I've learned it, if I'm wildcarding early, when there's a next big wildcard window, take hits. Maybe I make some points up in the, let's say I made up 15, 20 points on you guys. I need to make sure I don't get left behind. That week I need to be aggressive, maybe even take -8 and realign with the new wildcard. So that is something for people who've already used their wildcard. I think on Game Week 10, when there's a swing, don't be afraid to take the hits over there.
So fair. I think defense is different. So I think apart from Cash, the 2 defenders will be different.
Right.
Bowen will be different. Mitoma will be different. And for 1 week, Saka will be different. So that's 5 differences. Assuming no other problems in the Game Week 8 wildcard occur between now and 10.
Right. And keep in mind, I'm advocating going for Gabriel now. I'm just saying keep him in place.
And jumping on form teams now who have middling fixtures at the moment, not really great fixtures on paper. I think that's also an important nuance you have to take in mind.
Correct.
Yeah.
I don't think there's
So-
much of a difference, to be honest. I think you just more need to take a mental state. If you're unhappy with your team, the way I look at it, wildcard. There's not significant differences where I can tell you that this is definitely better. 10 is definitely better than 8. I don't think there's enough
No, there is
differences
not.
there.
Of course, there is not.
Yeah.
Then everybody would be doing that. But
Right.
it is enough team dependent for people to say, if my team looks bad and I really want Villa and Spurs now, wildcard now. No need to wait
Right.
for 10. If your team looks okay now, and you can say, look, I'm seeing these teams with Ward-Prowse, who plays Newcastle and Villa. I'm seeing these teams where I have Trippier and they have Watkins. For me, it's fine. I have Alvarez. So if you're seeing that and you're saying it's not very different, then the value of waiting for me is huge. Let's not underestimate the value of waiting, even though the teams are only 5 picks different. Those 5 could be 7 if you get injuries in other places, or if something else happens, or information changes. So
Watkins was in no wildcards last week. Watkins is in every single wildcard this
No, and
week.
injuries will definitely happen. Like you've seen, like teams last week who wildcarded had Botman and Eze. You just have to be aggressive and take hits. Then that's the only loss over there, I would guess.
Yeah, and you will need to be aggressive, because if you're going with Salah and Haaland, your squad's going to be thin as well. You will need to take hits. Like that is
and
going
I
to
think
happen.
one thing we forget is FPL is about certain paths that you take depending on what things happen, right? If you go back in time, some people chose Maddison over Sterling and vice versa. People who chose Sterling then went Son the next week because they wanted some cover for Sheffield United. People who had Maddison thought, I don't want to double up on Son and Maddison because I don't want them for Arsenal and for Liverpool. So one change makes you go down a different path. And that, people who had Gabriel in the beginning of the season, they changed him to a Gusto or a Colwill. Now, that was obviously they were sad that they had Gabriel. They had to choose a Chelsea defender. They've had more points than other people who went Sterling and Jackson because of what happened. So I'm saying the paths become so different depending on even one change that 5 changes is a lot.
Yeah. And also, I think people just need to understand. And I think one thing is people are panicking a lot because of rank. Like this week, I had 30 points. I fell from 500K to 1.8 million in one shot. Now, I know of people that owned Levi Colwill and jumped up 1 million because of a single assist plus clean sheet. Like one player who's slightly, and not everybody is very highly owned, actually. It's a season of middling ownerships for a lot of people. One player, double-digit haul, takes you up 500, 600, 700K. So don't let that rank make you panic or exaggerate, even if you're sitting outside 4 or 5 million. 2-3 hot weeks with the right guys and you're jumping in no time. And I think this is going, people are saying that by come around game week 18, 19, things might change. I was looking at a post from Planet FPL and Suj, and they set up a team where they have made no transfers. That team is doing better than all the 3 teams on this podcast and both the teams on their podcast. And that's the nature of the season because there are so many good picks at the moment. So I don't think it's going to be easy to climb up, but I think the shift in ranks might be extreme in the future as well. So don't panic when you're extremely falling by an extreme margin as well. Just wanted to add that.
Yeah, well said.
Well said. What else should we cover, guys? Let's cover captaincy.
Let's do 18-19 because there were questions.
Sorry, of course. Go ahead.
Before we cover 18-19,
yeah,
since we've given you guys so much food for thought in terms of what to do for 8, what to do for 10, Adams told me hammer in this point. The likes to people watching this podcast ratio is very, very low. There's about 850,000 people, 900 people watching this. Just please, Zoph, you tell them, because I tell them every week. Tell them to hit the like and subscribe button.
Hit like and subscribe, guys. It really helps us with the algorithm, helps us with our reach, encourages us, and we appreciate it.
Cheers. Go on, Zoph. Go on, Pras.
Okay, so people who are looking to say, this discussion, by the way, we didn't have with the no Salah discussion. If you don't need Salah, and if you come down to it, after everything we've discussed, that I'd rather have Son, Saka, Haaland, Watkins, and Trippier, let's say, then you could just say, look, I don't need to wildcard. Because a lot of people are wildcarding to squeeze all their money, upgrade their Saka position to a Salah. Essentially, that's what is happening with the wildcard. Now that may well pay off, and we expect it to pay off. But let's say you're of the mind that I'm going to sacrifice on a Salah. I don't need to captain him. I'm going to get a Darwin or a Diaz or whoever. So then the alternative way to do it is basically you go through this period, or you sell whoever to get to a Salah. So I'm not saying it's the only way. But let's say you go through this period. What will happen is after game week 14, 15, both Brentford and Man City have decent fixtures. So what people might do is they'll be tempted to not buy an Alvarez, not buy a defender, because they will say, oh, they're going to blank in game week 19. And game week 18 blank, sorry, game week 18 blank is confirmed because they're playing in the Club World Cup. So what a wildcard does then is you can still attack City a little bit more. Then you can sell them before the wildcard, before the blank, and you buy them all in game week 19 wildcard. And game week 19 wildcard is basically the last week. You can also do it in game week 20, but it's the last week when you can wildcard and get all of these guys back, because it's very, very likely, because it's a free midweek, that game week 20 will be the double. And the double for Man City will be Sheffield United at home and Brentford at home. So that's the point where a lot of people will want to have triple Man City. Maybe you can even say you want a Mbumo and a Flecken. So basically you can maximize that double and you can get all these guys while other people will have to take a hit. The other benefit is you won't have to bench Haaland. A lot of us who are wildcarding earlier will probably just say, look, I don't have enough transfers to take out Haaland, get Haaland back, get 2 more City guys before the double. I'm just going to bench him. You get Ollie Watkins, who has a great fixture that week. And now I don't know if I have it in front of me who he plays in game week 18.
Expected to have it memorized by now, Pras.
It's a good fixture is what I remember. So game week 18, Villa play...
We'll check. But the whole thing with that, Pras, from what I'm understanding is you're sacrificing a lot in the weeks leading up to that for just optimizing for a short period, right?
Yeah. Villa play
You're
Sheffield United.
sacrificing if your team isn't in good place. Like so many people could be on Arsenal, Son, Spurs already. They're sacrificing potentially Salah because all the others are available in one move. So that was his caveat. If you're happy not constricting your funds, that was the caveat.
Correct. So
Yeah.
that's I think it's viable, but there's a reason why Zoph has already wildcarded and LR and I are thinking about wildcarding soon, that there are losses that you can take in your team just for that one pick.
And from what I remember, Brentford's double isn't great in 20, right?
I mean, whenever City is one of the teams, then it's difficult. So I think it's
exactly,
City away
plus-
and Crystal Palace away.
Yeah, and you can possibly get 2 City even in for a hit. I don't necessarily think that's a good enough reason. Only if your team is in good shape, that's fine. But because they have the double, etc., it's too far ahead to plan for.
Yeah.
Plus, you want the City doublers on the Friday before the double. So this was my big con. Like, you can sit in on Boxing Day when you have to actually wildcard, and you can get your 3 City thinking, okay, Alvarez is fine now, and maybe Ruben Dias is fine now. But you never know. Like, during the busy Christmas period, if you want your triple up before a double game week, the best time to do it is basically on the Friday after Pep has spoken, and then you get the 2 who you have maybe the most expected minutes out of.
But also, when you're going to be wildcarding, then you're going to be wildcarding not just for the double, right? You're going to be the value also is that if your team hangs on till so late, you're going to keep a short-term view about 6-7 weeks at that point also. So if your team is in good shape, and one of the examples I want to cite is FPL General. He's doing really well. He's been sitting patiently on Trippier and Watkins since the last 2-3 weeks. He's been very patient with his players so far this season. He might not need to move the wildcard if he continues on the same trajectory. And I know a lot of managers who are assessing whether they need to shift their structure to accommodate more. Because if you're it's the only reason you're probably going to wildcard that heavily is to accommodate more. Because if you have Spurs, Arsenal, and a couple of Villa, West Ham in place, they're not difficult to get to. It's not difficult to get to that team, minus Salah at the moment.
Just one thing I wanted to mention is that Saka can possibly, and I'm using the word cover very loosely over here, cover the captaincy somewhat for Salah, because you have Haaland in 9, home to Brighton, then Saka 10, home to Sheffield. 11 again is good for Haaland, 12 is good for Saka. 13 you could go Liverpool, 14 again you have Saka, Wolves and Luton. So if you have to go without Salah, that's the sort of captaincy rotation I possibly like.
Correct.
Yes, Zoph. Now you see it. It's there.
But
It's
I just
there
don't
if you want to.
That's the only alternative I can see. But you will need alternatives to Haaland, I think.
Yeah, it's tough. I'm not looking forward to the decision at all.
Let's talk about captaincy for this week now. I think it needs about a good few minutes of discussion. I think it's possibly, let's get Haaland out of the way. Not an option at all?
I mean, if other
Haaland is
teams
never
also
an-
had difficult fixtures, then yeah, but not now. I mean, this is the week to go against him.
I think so. Without Rodri, I'm not confident.
Yeah.
If
Worth pointing out that Stones and Bilbao are training today. And
Bilbao
they're
is a big
two-
one.
Both Bilbao's a big one. Really, really big one. And because Kovacic gave away the ball so much in that game, had a really poor performance. Nunes has been decent. And Bilbao is a big one. So I think there are opportunities to captain somebody else, but Haaland is never not an option, in my opinion.
Precisely what I would like. Let's talk now about Spurs. Now, you mentioned, Ella, that Son could potentially be more fit because we saw him go off that game, and there's a videos posted by some Korean Twitter accounts about him grimacing in pain after coming off the bench. And now what worries me is they have the Korea international right after. If you're going to flog Son for 90 minutes, there's no way you can say to South Korea, guys, he's not available. He's not fit. So that might play into it a little bit. And so again, very high energy game. I think they could potentially do without Son. I'm not building a narrative over here, but do you think he gets 60, 70 minutes as a captaincy option? And is that enough? LR, I'll ask you first.
70 minutes is enough, in my opinion, for Son as a captaincy option.
I'd agree with that. Pras?
I agree as well. I mean,
I'll tell you what happens with such games, right? It's the Sheffield United example. Newcastle scored in the first 10 minutes. Spurs
Game
didn't
state.
score in the first 10.
It's all
It
game
just
state.
is game state. If Luton leak one goal in the first 15 minutes, we could see Son get double, triple return. But if they don't, it's just that is the factor. Not much else. And by the time deadline arrives, you're probably going to know based on how leagues work these days whether Son is starting or not.
I'd agree. It's the first game.
Yeah.
No Mahatma
Son is
Gandhi
starting.
curse. Not
Yeah.
necessarily, Pras. We don't know yet. We don't know. That's only Tuesday. Let's wait for some team news. We assume he's
Of
going to
course.
start, but obviously things can change. I would say don't make the early transfer. I didn't have the option to do it. I took the price fall for Saka and the rise for Son, a 0.2 swing, just because I want to be completely sure, since it
Sure,
is the
sure.
first
Yeah.
kickoff. Gandhi curse doesn't worry either of you guys?
Nah. We played FPL in the era of Robin Van Persie. I don't care about it.
Fair enough.
And especially when Spurs play no midweek
That's the
games.
point. That's the point.
Yeah.
So it worries me in game week 9. Now it's rich for me to say because I don't own Salah. It worries me in game week 9 because Liverpool play the first game and Klopp has complained every single time they have the first early kickoff after an international break. Last season, Liverpool had 6 games, early kickoffs. They didn't win a single one. This time, game week 4, they had an early kickoff, losing to Wolves at halftime, made subs, and then they won. But that worries me for different reasons, not because Gandhiji has said that you can't captain.
What
And
about
also, Liverpool have their fair share of South Americans in that team. Diaz and Darwin both are fairly important to that squad. So
And
it makes-
McAllister.
And McAllister. Wow. It's quite a lot for that
And
team.
Salah's in Africa. So
Yeah.
they travel across the continent, all of them.
Let's talk about Maddison as well. I think if you don't own Son, do you need to get him in? Let's say, because assume you're looking at the Fulham game, do you need to get him in just to captain him? Because you're not going to do it next week against Fulham at home. He's a good pick, but can you possibly swerve him and captain Maddison?
Madison is a decent captaincy option, especially because of the deep block conversation that we're having. Again, this is a fixture that is going to facilitate the runners, possibly if you're expecting Luton to sit back. I still captain Son over Madison 9 out of 10 times, but Madison is a decent captaincy shot.
It's a minutes,
week.
right? Because again, Son could be, again, playing devil's advocate here. But since he's playing with the injury, you could see him aggravate it in the 10, 15, 20th minute. Anything's possible. With Maddison, I know I'm getting 90 plus minutes for sure. There's set pieces, etc., things like that.
Not for sure. He's had his fair share of early subs. He's also carrying a niggly bit of injury for a while now.
Yeah.
There's been 75, 80, 85 minute subs a lot for Madison also.
But I think it's a different level because we saw that game
Yeah.
also as well. Son got subbed very early. Madison played almost till 88, 90. He is carrying it, but I feel a bit more secure with minutes over there. I think he's a decent shout because again, this is the game we can expect Madison to arrive late in the box. The last 2 games, we expected him to do a lot of dirty work. This game, I expect Madison to have solid goal threat.
2 other
Just
options I want to discuss. Go on, Pras.
No, I was just saying, if the player doesn't have penalties, I'm just put off by going for him over a guy who has penalties. Like for me, both Salah Son are better than Madison easily
I'd agree
because
with
of
that.
pens.
But do you know that Madison doesn't have penalties? We don't know.
I mean, we can. I think Postecoglou hinted that Sonny's on or something like that. But no, we don't. We can't be sure until we have it.
He said Son and Madison are a part of the penalty group, is what he said. So that's where we are. We don't know for sure yet, is all I'm saying. It's
If Maddison
likely
is on
all,
pens, then that actually makes Son for me. I can lose Son in Game Week 10 World Cup. So actually, I would love to know that.
all three of us are on the assumption that Son is going to be in penalties. So
Yeah.
that aside, I just wanted to mention that. That's all.
Correct. Let's talk about some of the others. And I think Salah should be right at the top of the list. I think Brighton don't like playing teams who play these long balls over the top with your pacey runners in behind. And traditionally, I think Salah has done quite well in this fixture. Minutes are safe. Brighton have a tough away game against Gattuso's Marseille on Thursday. So I don't think this is a easy fixture at all for Brighton. It's a big banana skin. What do you guys think? Salah over Son?
Yes.
I
Just
think
because
it's
of
similar.
minutes.
I think similar, but yeah, a better fixture for Son, but no minutes for Salah. So I think it's very similar, to be honest.
Yeah. If Postecoglou tells you on Friday that Son's done, he's recovered well, he's put his problems behind you on Friday, then that would make Son higher than Salah for me.
That's a good point.
What do you guys think of rogue Darwin shout now that Cody's not going to play and Jota is suspended for this game?
I would still prefer Son. I think if you know he's starting, possibly Maddison over him.
Forget the ranking, just generally, because neither Gakpo nor Jota can play.
You might get 90 minutes for Darwin, something we haven't seen till now.
Like, yeah, I mean, Doa could come and Darwin's still carrying something also. It's worth mentioning that. But if he's fit, it's something that's playing around in my mind as just a rogue shout.
Same as Maddison for me. Both good options should get a return, but not on pens. Doesn't make me feel as confident captaining over somebody who's on pens also has a good fixture.
And one option I want to discuss, Bukayo Saka as a captaincy option against a Rodri-less Manchester City. How do you feel about that?
Ceiling doesn't feel high. I expect him to get one return, but not more than that. I think they're better picks.
Because we've seen goals in such games. Even
scored
last time, I think.
fixture also, and right now, I think he's contributed to about 50% of Arsenal's goals.
Yeah.
It could have been more with the penalties.
NPXGI this season amongst all mids. Hey, Pras, we need to discuss that, man. You got away with bloody murder. Like, how have we not mentioned that on the podcast so far, man?
Look, what I will say is I was very happy that I didn't watch the 3 p.m. games. I was basically out with the family and I decided there's too many games, too much noise. I'll be on my phone the whole time. I switch on the phone and I basically check at 5 p.m. Penalty. And I'm like, I'm going to stop playing, delete my team. And then I realized that actually, it's only Saka only scored one and the other two he didn't take. Of course, it's huge luck. I mean, I don't know if it's something that continues or it was just a one-off that Saka became charitable this particular day. Maybe in games where he scores first, he's not that desperate to score again, so he gives them away. But yeah, very fortunate. But then the next thing I checked was the Diaz own goal. And then after that, nothing has gone right. So I feel like, this one was whoever sold Saka, man, it was a big let off.
Yeah, man.
I'm nervous about selling him now. Even for Son, it doesn't feel right selling Saka. I tried to do everything I can to keep him, but the rest of the squad does suffer with Saka-san. It is doable, but then the defense becomes absolute rubbish. 4.5 is all around.
Yeah.
And I like Maddison, I think, for the next two. That's why I think I made that decision. But one eventuality I want to prepare our audience for. Let's say we get late news that Son is benched. Who's the next best? Do you go for Maddison if you don't own Salah?
Yeah, I've got options in Maddo and Darwin, so I'll go there.
I will buy a Richarlison.
That's an option as something to, but I want us to have a short discussion just in case that does happen, right? We don't know. We're spotting on Tuesday. I think you go for Maddison.
Maddison, Saka, if you find a way to Salah, nothing like it as well, and Darwin. These are all good options. I mean, Danny's considering
or Haaland
captaining.
Even. I could probably even just go Haaland that in the case that since you probably get one return at least.
Yeah. Dan's considering captaining Bruno Fernandes this week. Home game against Brentford. He's like, I'll just play the fixture. Brentford hasn't looked that good. I was like, surprised. It's all United need to do is easier said than done is Polo Watkins, essentially.
Yeah.
Like,
but Brentford in big games with the back three, a totally different prospect when the other team has more of the ball.
Yeah. Yep.
Not very
Cool.
keen
Let's
on
move
it.
to our teams.
Yes, let's do that. Right, this is my team up first. Areola in goal. Cash, Cher, Estupinan, Salah cap, Saka, Madison, Bumo, Diaby, Haaland, Alvarez. On the bench, Turner, Archer, Botman, Kabore. I've already done one of my 2 free transfers. I moved Rashford to Madison before the price changes. I have about $1 million in the bank, which affords me Saka to Son. I'm hoping Son somehow doesn't make it so I can focus something on defense. I really don't like the look of it this week.
Yeah, it's a hope. Zoph.
hope.
It looks likelier than non-likely at the moment.
But even if I bring
If
in
Son-
Son, I'm going to do the old LR, keep the insurance there, and probably go Salah cap.
Yeah, it's a good idea. I think Salah is a good captaincy option. It depends on what Postecoglou says on Friday, honestly.
Correct. Areola versus Turner is a bit of a decision now, you think, with Isaiah out?
He just still create chances. I don't know if I'll
Yeah.
play Nottingham Forest away from home.
Yeah.
They're away, right?
Turner,
Yeah.
and Turner might not start. And also,
I mean, if he starts with it's not a decision anyway. Like, goalkeeper isn't getting subbed on unless you're Arteta.
I've played the wrong keeper on 2 or 3 occasions already this season. I just want to remind myself because I regret it every time
You
I
mentioned
indulge
it
in
earlier
rotation.
also, right? The middling teams.
They just work, and you're going to get your 9-10 point hauls in those games. It's already happened with Johnston last week. I got baited into Turner. Wasn't a good decision. I just don't know if rotation is a good idea. Simply put.
Yeah, just stick to
because you miss out on the haul.
stick to Areola. I'd agree with that, I
Yeah.
guess.
And if you're going with Areola, then see that out through for the next 10 weeks because you'll hit a couple of 10-point hauls as well. So just stick with it.
I'd agree with
Could
that.
you
But
not have done, Zoph, could you not have done Rashford to Son directly?
no, I didn't have any money in the bank. 0.
Oh, you didn't have. Okay. Because it feels like you could have avoided Madison, gone straight to Son, and then.
What I could have done, I could have possibly downgraded Estupinan to a 4.5 or something and gone that route. But I like the prospect of Madison for the next 2 game weeks, and I can always come back to Saka by downgrading a Bumo somewhere else, raising money from defense. I don't plan to come back to Saka till 12. I know you mentioned
Spurs wing back for more.
Little bit, but then again, I don't expect them to keep a clean sheet away to Luton. I think Luton do score. Fulham home is good, but the fixtures after that are quite tough. I guess you could look at Palace as
you
a
don't need
good
Spurs
fixture.
after that.
They could look at Palace as a good fixture, but then again after that you have Chelsea, Wolves away, tough fixture for a clean sheet. We've seen the attack, Villa, Man City. After that, it's not that great.
And plans for Watkins?
No plans. Probably see after the international break, see what I can do money-wise. I'm not that opposed to holding Alvarez as well through those fixtures.
No, it's absolutely fine. I mean, having a Newcastle defender and Alvarez is absolutely fine.
So pretty much, I think Saka to Son will be my second move. That's what I'm set on. Anything else you guys would suggest?
No.
No, I mean, I'm comparing wildcard drafts. You're basically just Watkins or Alvarez and Estupinan instead of Spurs defender. If you do Saka to Son.
Right.
Okay, Mbumo, you can argue. We can have a discussion in Mbumo as well, by the way. What do you think?
He's completely broken, man.
You have broken him, man. I mean, look, I think partly you mentioned it, right? They're suffering from injuries, so it wasn't a great performance. But also, I think Brentford are not a poor team. They'll find a way. They'll create some chances. So I'm still okay to hold him for the next. This is, well, let's see. Let's see.
And then
they also have Burnley at home, right? Next.
They have Burnley at home. That's really the carrot I plan to hold him for. I don't mind taking a hit for a Bowen for him out in some place around game week 10. That's when the big shift is. And in general, they could have had a penalty the last game as well. I think they had a couple of good shouts for a penalty. What will be interesting to see is whether Bumo plays up top now at Old Trafford or at wing back. Because we know he's going to play that back three. He does so to the big six. He's going to play Mopai and Wissa or Bumo as a right wing back. That would really completely shift the goalposts. Because then again, after Burnley, you have Chelsea away. If he's going to play up top against Chelsea, I don't mind. But if he's going to play wing back, nah.
Agreed.
Plus, this is your team with Sterling and Bumo? Yep.
Yep. So Pickford didn't get me the clean sheet finally against Luton. Look, just didn't work out. But I will play him now for the next 2 weeks. Well, him and then Turner next week. So Pickford in goal. Bournemouth at home. We'll see. We go again. Trippier. Finally, my sweetheart Trippier is back, who gave me a very jammy assist, but got 12 points. The same. We repeated every pod. Clean sheet, assist, 3 bonus. So he's there. Although it's a difficult fixture, but still, I think happy with that. Diaz, finally, he could do something. Then Saliba will become Poro, pretty much 99%. So I'll wait. I'll wait till Saturday morning. Then Maddison, Son, Rashford, Sterling. We haven't actually had a question. So let me finish this and then let's have a quick Sterling chat.
Yep.
And then Umumbo we just spoke about. Alvarez.
I'm just going to be back in a second, guys.
Yeah. So Alvarez
Ella
and
doesn't
Haaland.
hear any ill about Sterling. We can't speak ill of
Exactly.
Sterling.
No bad Chelsea talk. Actually, we managed quite well not to talk Chelsea this week. So this is my point. I'm actually fairly happy with this team. There's not a single player. Maybe I can say Watkins. That I'm actually thinking I must have. Okay, Salah. But then Salah needs the wild card. So I'm actually okay with the team. So therefore, I'm not considering a wild card.
I would still sell Sterling, I think. I know pre-pod you guys were mentioning about Burnley's high line. They're not playing that high anymore. He's adapted a little bit, and I don't think Sterling gets in ahead of Palmer on the right. If everybody is fit from who played on Monday, I think Sterling will be on the bench.
So I'll have to obviously research on what some fans. So there is conflicting views. A lot of people feel he'll come in for Mudryk. So we will see. I mean, Poch did say he was ill. So my two transfers before I wildcard are Saliba to Poro and Sterling to a dead end. It could be Diaz against Everton. It could be Morgan Gibbs-White against Luton, something like that. So Sterling is going next week. It's only this week, if I have enough conviction that Sterling starts or not. And Saliba to Poro is just a no-brainer. Good pick for the next 2 weeks. So that's the plan.
That's perfect for the next two. I think that's possibly more optimized. You take your chance with Sterling in that case, right? If he's benched, he's benched.
I mean, I can do Saliba to Poro and Sterling to Diaz right now for a hit, but then it doesn't feel right taking a hit 2 weeks before wildcard.
Especially because Diaz after the post IB, you're like, will he play?
Exactly.
And also, Sterling the Burnley fixture is a good matchup for a player like Sterling. You like that Burnley like to hold possession and that slight highline thing as well. And Mudryk is also a good matchup, but I just think that he will go. Sterling's like, yes, Palmer played well. Yes, Mudryk did decently, but Sterling's been Chelsea's best attacker in the last 5-6 weeks. And, I think I'm hoping that holds instead when Pochettino's picking his team this week, because I like the matchup against Burnley.
Your team, LR?
Right, I've got Johnston in goal, Kabore, Bayer, and Estupinan as my defenders. In midfield, I've got Son, Rashford, Saka, Maddison, and Sterling. Up front, I've got Haaland and Darwin. Potentially planned moves are Kabore and Chilwell to either Poro and Luka Dean or Udogi and Dalot is where I am. So I'm going to make sure that I'm starting two playable defenders. Dean is on 4 yellows, but I feel like, if he gets a yellow this game, I'll just wildcard in 9, put it ahead a week early is where I am. Because why worry? 1 week in terms of a wildcard isn't going to make a difference too much. And I'm actually just hoping that something like that happens so that I get to wildcard in game week 9, because game week 10, I'm flying off to Thailand in the middle of the week for a bachelor's. And I don't know how that's going to work. Like, I've been trying to debate this and massage in terms of, you'll have more time than you will when you're at work, but you will also potentially not be very focused.
You'll be far more relaxed, won't you, though?
You'll be relaxed.
Yeah.
No Salah.
Yeah. I have taken those decisions, when I've been in Goa, etc., when I've jumped on players, taken some risks, etc. They worked out more than not. So, maybe I'm relying on instinct more if I wildcard in 10. But yeah, it is what it is, and I can't. We play the game we do, and if you have to be on your phone when on a bachelor's in Thailand, it is what it is.
So what's the move you're planning again?
2 defenders out, Chilwell and Kabore or Bayer, for 1 Spurs defender.
You have 2 free transfers?
I have 1 free transfer. It's for a hit.
Yeah, I'll just risk it.
Just risk it and play Bayer against your lot?
Play Kabore for the attacking return at home.
No, but he wants it. He's going to risk it for 2 weeks then. Just doesn't feel right.
It's a different, yeah. I've been not taking hits for the last 2 weeks, and it's been costing me with
Botman also isn't getting back from what I hear post IB. Yeah. I don't think he'll be back for 9.
I would take.
Yeah, I'll just take the hit. Yeah, and I'm making sure if I take a hit, it's for like a Dean or a Dalot, like somebody who has potential to offer clean sheet as well as an attacking return is where I am. And just say my prayers is where at, because I think the attack is fine.
Okay.
In terms of just a little bit of a discussion between Udogi and Poro, and I had this chat with Baker because, like, I don't know if you guys saw it, but like against Liverpool, and I don't know if it was because they were against 9 men or something. Udogi was playing central striker so much of the game. Like his positioning was so good. Then I had a chat with Baker. Then I had a chat with Jazzy, who I discussed a lot of FPL with. Both of them had the same comp in terms of Poro is more like Trent. He's just a better player. He's offering a lot more quality. So while his positioning on paper might not be as strong as Udogi, he just has the better shot on him, is the more complete player, has the better pass on him as well. So it's more Trent versus Robo as a comp if you're making it. That's the point.
And for 1-2 weeks, it doesn't really matter that much.
Yeah.
1-2 weeks, anything can happen.
Come next week, Pras, you're sitting with Poro on a 15-pointer and I'm sitting on a Udogi yellow for 5-pointer.
Poro own goal.
Yeah. You don't know what's going to happen.
Let's wrap up, guys. Plus, the chat is going a bit crazy. They're asking you to read certain super chats.
I have read them and my son watches the pod. So I can just say thank you for the comments. But yeah, no comment.
No comment further. Let's wrap up, guys. Any last words?
I just read that super chat. I urge everybody, we don't delete our super chats. I just urge everybody except Pras's son to read that super chat.
All right. Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Our Discord league. Please, if you become a member, you join the Discord league. Our September winner will be announced tomorrow. So once the Luton game is finished, and FCAs, we haven't talked about the FCA.
You haven't given FCA plug.
So the content awards, there will be a link at the bottom of the video. If you can, please vote for us. We're really keen to sort of put our name forward here. And if you love our content, please, that would be much appreciated.
Yeah, man, just vote for us if you like our work. And
Pras is definitely getting 1 vote. We already know.
Yeah. Yeah. If you like those kind of super chats also. Pras is quiet. Like Pras is quiet and smiling.
I'm too old for that stuff.
I don't believe that. I do not believe that you're too old for that stuff one bit, Pras. I don't believe that at all. Pras has got a little hidden tiger somewhere in there.
I'm not going to Thailand, you are.
It's true.
Right. I just never mind. I don't want to go there right now. That's it. Thank you, guys. Thank you for being. Yeah. Thanks for being with us. And there might be a chance you might see a video on Thursday. We might get one of the many members in the community who are on a wildcard just to have a 30-35 minute discussion with them on wildcards. It's not confirmed yet. We'll see how things go. But until then, see you next time. Take care, guys, and good luck.
See you. Good luck. See you guys soon. Bye-bye.
Good luck on the pitch, Pras.
Thank you.
Good luck to India in the upcoming World Cup as well. We should give that.
Oh, yeah.
Let's go.
Yep.